Hello and welcome to a new year of the Auto Guide Show. This week, Kyle drives a bunch of SUVs and goes to Detroit while I just sit here and kind of watch, and we will have a special feature from Detroit. So let's get started. All right, so to kick things off before we get into your plethora of SUV reviews, Honda kind of dropped this somewhat surprising. I mean, we knew something was coming, but just suddenly they're like, oh, hey, here's our new Zero sedan and Zero SUV that no one saw, and it's coming out this year apparently. Like, yeah, there's a lot to take in at once, and those watching or who saw the pictures, they don't look like they're ready to come out this year. Like, they're very out there.
I don't know. I think Honda doesn't do wild concepts too often. Well, for North America, it does wild concepts for its home shows, but I think these actually do look pretty production ready. I haven't really seen the interiors because this week I don't know what was shown for that. But I think outside of some mirrors that probably aren't going to make production, they look largely production ready. I think what's throwing us is that they're very different from everything Honda current has, which I think is mostly a good thing. I think they're very stylish, and I think it really draws strangely on Honda's history.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant by production ready. Like, yeah, they're obviously going to go on production. It's just I wasn't expecting something like this. Like you said, they don't have mirrors. I think they have cameras, and I'm pretty sure they're not certified to do that, so they'll have mirrors. The SUV looks like a big, was the Honda E? Is that what they called it? That little hatchback.
But without the cute little headlights.
Yeah, but it has a similar sort of style. The sedan, it's the back end's it's like a big hatch. The back end's unusual, and I mean, car nerds or Gran Turismo fans will know the reference, but it kind of looks like the Mazda RX 500 from the 70s.
Yep.
But
yep. Yeah, that was my thinking. That and the Dome Zero, another Gran Turismo.
Yes. Yeah. Which basically means it has a very 70s futuristic look, which I think is cool. And I mean, I can't wait to try it out if that's what it's going to be like. And I think it will really stand out, and good for Honda because they're late to the EV game. The current ones are co-produced, but better or worse than their platform mates. But, if they're going to go with their own EV, go all in with this. And I know they've had the E in other markets, but this is going to be their larger, more high-scale version.
North American ones. Yeah, I think it looks really cool. I really like the retractable covers for the headlights, too, on the sedan. Like, yay, we're getting retractable lights back in a way. The profile looks especially strange, though, with the blackout roof. It kind of looks
the white
a little bit. Yeah, it kind of looks a little bit like a shoe. And that feels like an insult. I really like
a roller skate.
Yeah,
it's like my foot should go in there.
Oh, this fits really nice. It's got some nice heel support. I think I really, it's so rare for us to see Honda take a big swing styling wise. Like, I think the last time was the previous generation Civic, right? When it came out, we were like, what the heck is going on? I'm excited. I really find this fascinating, and it's especially fascinating considering there was another Honda EV at the same show.
Yeah, we've got more from Honda coming up. You're right. The 06 Civic, I think, was when they really shocked people with the big direction. Even, I would argue, the first Pilot with how boxy it was. But this is just a whole other thing. Anyway, moving on, we will start with Kyle's SUV. So we'll start with the fastest first. So while you and I were at the LA Auto Show, I was walking like a sucker to and from the show. Well, you had something a little more exciting.
Yeah, the most common car in LA, apparently.
A G-Wagon?
Almost. The sporty G-Wagon. No, I drove my first Lamborghini, a Urus Performante. And
saw that.
Yeah, bright green. I think the green, I wish I could remember the price now because it's been a week of wildness in Detroit. But I'm pretty sure the price itself is basically the cost of a Nissan Versa, just the paint. So it's wild. It was very funny because it was literally dropped off from a truck, like one of those shipping container truck things, in the middle of the street downtown LA. That's how I received the vehicle. So it kind of set the tone for the whole week, where I thought this was it's very shouty. It's a Lamborghini, right? Almost no one gave this a second look.
I was gonna say, getting the Lamborghini dropped off in the middle of the street is what the locals call a Tuesday.
Yeah, that was the thing. It's like I think I saw a few people notice it, but otherwise, I've told this story to you before, but I'll tell the listeners. A colleague and I went to an event in the one evening, and we walked from dinner, and it was like 40 minutes, and we saw 6 Urus Performantes on that walk. Not just regular Uruses, but Performantes. So it is very popular, and it's easy to see why. I mean, we can sneer at the idea of, oh, it's not a real Lamborghini, or it's a fancy RSQ8, and oh well, like people don't care. They want a Lamborghini that they can put more than one friend in. And there's a lot of theater in the cabin. It drives really well. I've seen other reviews talk about how harsh the ride is, but honestly, I thought it was fine. Like it's stiff, obviously, but it wasn't uncomfortable. And LA does not have the greatest roads.
Yeah, the reference about it being an Audi, it's platform 8. It's got their engine and stuff, but at least it's not like a lot where it's just a different body. Like the body, interior, even the engine's been tweaked up, and the brakes and chassis. So I mean, it's not your typical Lamborghini. Like, should it have a V10 or V12 under the hood? Yeah, but then that would require so much engineering because those engines aren't meant to be up front, and you can't make this mid-engine because what's the point? It's probably something someone's going to do, make a mid-engine 2-seat SUV down the road.
Come on. Yeah, it was the thing is, for me, is like whether or not it's a real Lamborghini, I can't judge. I've driven one. The thing for me was that it's fast and loud and silly looking, and thus that feels pretty authentic to Lamborghini in my mind. And it is wildly quick up on the Angeles Crest, like uncomfortably quick.
It's not a real Lamborghini, and when people say that, it's like, Lamborghinis evolved over time. I know, like, they had V12s in the back, but then they got huge and they didn't handle, and they became good handling. And they got all-wheel drive, and that was like blasphemous. And it's like people say it's not a real Ferrari. Well, then I guess your Ferrari needs to be a V12 or V8 up front, because that I guess is a real Ferrari, a tiny one too, like a 2-liter V8 or something.
Yeah. So. And also, I mean, heck, this is closer to an original Lamborghini anyway. It's closer to a tractor than than anything else is. Yeah.
For a company that made the ML002, I know that had a V12, but they've done SUVs before.
Yeah.
So moving on to something completely different. The big news at the Detroit Auto Show, which is cool for Ford, but kind of a sad reflection of the state of the show, but we'll get to that later, was the GTD, the super Mustang that's going to probably cost $300,000, brought out a special model already. I mean, I don't even know if the first one's shown up to a single customer yet. Nope. They're like still taking orders, but like, here's our first. And the best was in the press release, Ford full out said the first of many special editions, because they're just going to milk this. So this one's called the Spirit of America, and it's inspired by Craig Breedlove and his world record Bonneville Salt Flat records. Ford's positioning it as the Mustang had the same spirit as Breedlove, because Breedlove was, I think he was an engineer, just a regular working guy, and then he bought a $500 Korean jet fighter engine used somewhere. I don't know how. And back in the 60s, like that's a good chunk of money, but it's not like, cars were like 3,000 to 4,000. So that's like me walking down the street and getting a jet engine for $10,000. Like that's crazy to think.
Yeah.
Anyway, strapped it to cars, and he's the first person ever to go 500 miles an hour and 600. And Ford's saying like that land speed was for like basically aristocrats in Europe that were better funded. And then the Mustang, they're like, our team of engineers made this car, and they took it to Europe and dominated racing. And it's like, Ford, you can't pretend. And they even call themselves like the David of Goliath. And like, you can't say that, Ford. You were like probably the biggest international motor company in the 60s.
And you threw so much money at one project to beat Ferrari. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, they do the same thing. They're like, see, we're the David versus Goliath. Like, no, you're the Goliath beating David.
Yeah.
And it's like
beating David with a stick.
And the Mustang, they made it sound like we converted this muscle car to this and that. It's like, no, you built a car that was on par with all the Europeans in size and weight. And it had like 4 times the horsepower from the V8. So like, you should have won. But anyway, that's all beside the point. So the package involves racing stripes, blue and red. So one of our commentators on the video said, I hope they're painted on for that price. And For good money, they probably aren't. And then you get red mirrors and red brake calipers. You can get exposed carbon mirrors because the GTD has exposed carbon front splitter, diffuser, and rear spoiler. But the rear spoiler on this one's a little different. The end plates can still be exposed carbon or red, and across the entire rear spoiler, it says Mustang on the bottom. And if you've seen the GTD, like, it's a race car spoiler. It is massive, and it says Mustang so big. And Ford said again, it's so cars you pass will see what passed them. And it's like, they probably knew it was a Mustang. Like, I hope there's an option not to get that, but then again, I guess you just don't get the spirit of America. You just get a GTD.
You get that option because you know that when you eventually sell this at some show years down the road, you want that box ticked for the extra money. I saw this in person, and I mean, again, like, it's cool, but to that point about you need to know what passed you, it barely feels like a Mustang. Like, the shape of it, like, I know the front, the face is very obviously new Mustang, but in a darker color, this is so wide and so aggressive that you're just like, what the heck was that? And so I kind of understand, but I still find it weird that this is a special edition about land speed cars when it's a high downforce handling focused vehicle. I just
yeah. Well, it's the spirit, like the first car to go to the Nürburgring and break 7 minutes. So, it's this whole spirit and blah, blah. And I guess they had to bring this out now, because if you brought it out in about a week or two when Chevy releases the ZR1 Nürburgring time, that's going to probably just trounce this. It loses some of its appeal. So
did you notice that about an hour before this debuted, Chevy put out a press release with the price of the ZR1, and it's half the cost of this Mustang?
Yeah, for more power, and like I said, I'm sure more performance. It's crazy. Like, that's always been Chevy's thing, right? Is the Corvette, regardless of whatever price it is, whenever you compare it to the cars it could beat, it was always so much less. I mean, they're crazy expensive now, but look what a GT3 RS costs now, or a Ferrari 296 or something. Like, it's still this bargain of a performance deal.
To put it in perspective, not to get a little, we're talking about things other than the Mustang, but just quickly, the ZR1 is $175,000 US. That Urus I drove was just about double that.
Well, I said it in our anticipated cars video, which you can check out on the YouTube channel. The ZR1 is probably going to beat every production car, like real production car. The only thing I don't think it'll probably beat is the Mercedes 1, but you can't call that a production car. I know technically it is, but it's going to be such low volume.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the Mustang. Yeah, to your point, it's a GT3 Mustang with street legal parts.
More power.
Yeah. So, I'm curious what the next sort of packages will be, but I think this is a package that would have served them far better on a GT. That's the Mustang owner that wants this America package. I don't know if someone buying a $300,000 Mustang wants that, although one of our commentators on our video said he has one ordered. So we'll see. But as I said in my video too, how long until people start replicating the red mirror cap wraps with these stripes on their Mustang, their regular Mustangs, and giant spoilers that say Mustang?
I mean, I'd rather that than yellow protection tape on the splitters. Just saying.
Yeah, just saying. So moving on. Oh, hey, I did drive something.
You did?
I did, and it was an SUV. What a surprise. So I drove the Mini Countryman S, and this is the one you've never driven, right, Kyle?
It's the one model I haven't driven yet. Well, I guess I haven't driven the base engine, right? Because there is one below the S.
No, this is it now. In North America, at least.
Oh, yeah. This is the one.
Yeah, they killed that 3-cylinder one. It's S or electric or JCW now.
Oh, because the regular Mini has a regular trim, and it just uses a depower version of this engine now. Yeah, the 3-cylinder's dead, but the 4-cylinder does a bunch of different power levels.
Yeah, which, I mean, the S used to make probably not much more power than the D-Tune, but anyway. So I titled it Less Mini, More Mini, and I think that's pretty much exactly what it is, because the vehicle is the biggest Mini ever made, and I know people always, every time a Mini comes out, it's big, it's big. It's get over it with the Countryman. The fact they were trying to restrain its size to be mini, I think hurt it.
Yeah.
This is now the proper size of that sort of sub-compact / compact small SUV, whatever you call it. The BMW X1 that it shares a platform.
The Crosstrek class.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like the Crosstrek size, the Corolla Cross size, or if you're in luxury, it's like the GLB size, the X1 size. So I think that's good because Mini's got the proper size now, and being X1 based, the 2-liter now makes 240 something horse. Yeah, 241, and it used to make 189. So that's a huge increase, and you feel it around town. Not so much. I mean, torque's way up too. It's like 295 compared to like 240. But if you get on it, or if you're on the highway and you're trying to accelerate, it goes. Like, that's not far off what the old JCW had. It's a heavier car by about 200, or SUV by 200 pounds, but that more than makes up for it. It's 5 inches longer than the old one, which means you can fit 4 adults in it, no problem, and you have decent cargo space.
Yeah.
It's not Mini Cooper handling. I mean, the Countryman never was, but it still has a bit of the Mini spirit when you compare it to the class it would fight against, like the Volvo XC40 or even the BMW's X1, Mercedes GLA, maybe price-wise. But it's got more of a BMW feel, more of a German feel. I don't think that's a bad thing. It feels more refined. It's got that like torque for days. It just feels solidly planted. The interior is 9,000% in Mini. Like it's like nothing else out there. Especially the one I had where it had the pixelated color change, where it was like classic brown that goes into the blue, and then around the dash it's blue, and then it goes back to brown on the passenger side, and then it goes brown on the back. And yeah, it's like carpet almost. Or,
yeah,
I don't know what we call it on the dash and everywhere.
It's a recycled knit. Yeah, it's cool. I really like that one.
The center screen, that's always been a Mini thing. It's a complete digital screen, which I don't think people realize. Like, it's a circle that's an entire screen. It's not like the old one where you had a square or rectangle within the circle. Like, that's pretty cool to make that and then have to develop all the software around it, and it works well. It has drive modes, which are cool because if you do timeless, it gives you an old school Mini speedometer, and allegedly the sound it's feeding in the cabin is a mixture of the 1959 Mini and the first JCW, so like the 05. If you put it in go-kart mode, it gets even louder.
And it does the woohoo.
Yeah, it does the uncopyrighted woohoo. That's slightly different than the other woohoo.
Yeah,
from a popular cartoon racing game on Nintendo. But as you have said before, the weirdest choice was the 8-speed, which was great because BMW makes a great 8-speed, was thrown out and in went a 7-speed dual clutch, which, okay, it's a Mini, it's sporty, I get it. You want it to be sportier, but you can't control it at all. There's no manual mode. Not with the shifter, which doesn't exist. It's a toggle now. Not with paddle shifters because they don't exist. The drive modes will change its behavior, but like go-kart mode, I want the sound and the response. But every time I hit the brake, it like downshifts 4 gears and just yeah, it's a little too hardcore. So I think I drove in timeless a lot because that kind of gave me a balance. But it's just a weird choice to give a less refined transmission that people complain about. And although it's good, you still get that huge delay going from reverse to forward. You get that delay from a stop. And I don't think start-stop should ever be paired with a dual clutch. That should just be outlawed. It's such a delay. So yeah, I don't get the thinking. Like the X1 doesn't use a dual clutch, right?
It does.
Oh, so that's how. But does it have paddles? I think it does.
I think it does have paddle shifters.
We'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I'll have to. Yeah, we did a comparison with it like 2 years ago. The base model. I know the M35i has paddle shifters because it would, and the JCW does. But yeah, that's the one drawback, because otherwise, like, I think both of us were saying, like, on paper, this is a really good little family vehicle, right? Like it does a lot. It checks a lot of the boxes, and it looks cool, and you're happy to be inside it. Yeah,
and I mean, I could totally live with the little delay. Like, price-wise, it's like, oh, it's expensive for its size, but that's if you think you're competing it against like Crosstreks and whatnot. If you're going against the luxury, it's actually undercutting them, and now it has the power, space, and it's a different interior. But I think for younger buyers, it's like the X1's got a really cool interior too.
Yes,
it's like the X1, but for, you know, a little less money, a little less maybe refined interior, but funkier. So yeah, it's a good vehicle, and I don't mind the new styling. I'm not sold on the plate behind the rear door on the window that it's almost like Land Rover Defender-ish.
Oh yeah,
it says all 4 on it. Like, oh, and the other thing is they call that this, I'm pretty sure, the silver accent package, and it's not silver, but maybe that's just my eyes. very much seems pewtery gold to me.
Yeah, the bronzy kind of. I really like it, but if it's called silver, that's an odd choice.
Yeah, maybe I read that wrong, but I looked at it a couple times, so I don't think so. Anyway, moving on to a slightly bigger SUV for less money.
Yes, I drove the Nissan Rogue. This was supposed to be a comparison, and it will be in the new year.
You're getting back in this next week.
Yes, but we ended up salvaging it and doing a review because we really like the Rogue. In terms of all of the non-hybrid SUVs out there in that class, the Rogue is a really good one. It is important that we mention the probe, the investigation into its engine, because there have been some quality questions in the U.S. and so there is, I think it's the NHTSA is looking into it.
Which is unfortunate because it's so cool, the variable compression 3-cylinder turbo that unleashed so much power.
I mean, so much power, except it's not making much more power than other engines the same size. it's making like 201, and the 1.5 in the CRV is making 190.
Yeah, that's true. I like the torque, but and it's refreshed this year, so that's why we want to do this comparison, because the refresh versus the all-new Forester, which we are going to rematch, and we might not have this one. Hopefully, I don't know if we have a 25 or not. I should actually check my email because I already got the details. But
it is there. I found out this week. But so the 25 is basically the same as the 24, but there is going to be a Rock Creek coming. I actually saw that when I drove the Murano last month in Tennessee. I saw the Rock Creek and it looks pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I know we talk about that off-roady, soft-roader kind of thing, but I mean, I already like the ride in the Rogue too. It's slightly too stiff for what it is, so I'm curious if the Rock Creek fixes that. The Rogue Platinum is just a really good all-rounder. It's pretty good on fuel. It's pretty spacious. It doesn't top the any particular aspect, but it's always pretty close to the top, and it's a reasonable deal versus some of the other top trims elsewhere. CRV.
Yeah, we are getting 25. I just looked it up, so yay. The Rock Creek was there when I saw the Murano unveiling, and we could have driven it. They had drives, but I just didn't have time. But I wonder if it'll be like the CX-50 Meridian, where that's the sweet spot. Mm-hmm. Time will tell.
Yeah.
So moving on to a Honda EV that was announced at CES. Didn't we already cover this?
Yeah, that's weird. I swear we just talked about Honda electric cars in Vegas.
So this is the Sony Honda Mobility. They probably said it, but I assume this will be sold through Honda dealers or Sony stores at the mall. I really don't know, but this is the car that they've been.
If you buy enough PlayStations, they actually just hand you one of these.
Oh, you can use your PS credits.
Yeah.
So this has been in development off and on forever. I think at one point, wasn't it Apple and Honda or something? And then I don't know, or they're just making their own car.
Yeah, Apple never officially partnered with anyone, I don't think. But this, I think the first concept for this was shown 2020, 2021. It's been a long time coming.
There's one way to prove how long they've been teasing this, and it's in Gran Turismo, and it takes cars decades to get into Gran Turismo, it seems like. So the fact I've been driving this for months virtually. I mean, to be fair, the exact same. It was
it was the previous one, but also, I mean, it's a Sony collaboration, so of course it came into Gran Turismo right off the bat. But yeah, it's. I have thoughts on this.
I'm just curious when we get all the specs and size and all the details, where's it stand against the Zero? Is Honda gonna launch two similar EVs? I'm assuming this will be more focused on autonomous driving and probably a little more expensive, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's way too expensive. You can get it's 80 grand US if you want one color. If you want any other color, you have to get the special options package, which is 12 grand more. It looks like a Civic, sort of a weird Civic, like a Grand Theft Auto Civic. I guess it's bigger, so that's good.
So look like an Accord.
Yeah, there we go. It's an Accord. I just don't know who this is for. who's spending nearly 6 figures on a Sony car with a strange name?
Does it have like the power and range and refinement of like a Lucid or a Tesla? Like,
Nope.
I assume, I don't know, because say if you're playing in that field, that's what you're going after.
It has
right?
the standard 300-ish miles, right? Which is what every new EV launches with.
Not the best.
Yeah, but it's, I want to say it's like 400 and like high 400s horsepower. So basically, it's like the base Lucid Air in terms of power, except way less range. And the Lucid feels high end. It feels classy, and it's got its own style. I genuinely, I don't understand. Maybe this is being shown here, but maybe I know the Japanese market has not really taken to EVs. Maybe that's where this is going to be pushed.
Yeah, I mean, like I was gonna say, when we have to wait to drive it, maybe that'll really impress us. But like the Lucid's not a bad car to drive. So, and it's got a nice interior. Like if it was just going as Tesla, it'd be like, okay, maybe it's down on range and tech, but it's a way better car. It's sort of like some of the competitors are. But anyway, time will tell. I feel like this was sort of like the prologue. It's a deal they made so long ago, and it's like, well, we got to finish it. So let's just get it out there.
Yeah. I like to think that whenever the Zero comes out, it will be under this, because that's the sweet spot, right? Like it seems, that's the other thing, is like it's a hard sell to tell anyone like, oh, do you want to spend 90 grand on a Honda? Like that's not
an NSX.
Yeah, that's just a sedan. Did you like the RLX? No? Well, here's something kind of like it.
But with less range.
Yeah, so, I mean, we'll see.
Well,
Maybe it'll drive incredibly.
All right, moving on to Kyle in a luxury SUV. What a surprise.
Yeah.
This one wasn't quite as powerful.
No, it's not. It's on the same platform, though.
I was going to say, but its underpinnings are somewhat familiar.
Yeah, so I drove the 24 Porsche Cayenne SE-Hybrid. There are 3 E-Hybrids in the Cayenne range now. Excuse me. This is the middle one, and it is, well, as you'd expect. In that sense, it's, well, the title says irrationally rational. You're buying a Cayenne. No, it's not the sportiest, but it's not the least sporty. It's a plug-in hybrid, but it's not the best plug-in hybrid in the class. I would say the X5 probably is, but this gets around the same power. It has more range now this year as part of the upgrades. It's very good and very practical, and I can drive around and do all my errands in the city on just battery power, and if I had a charger at home, I could plug in every day. But that's weird, right? Like I'm not buying a Porsche to be super practical and reasonable and rational. Like so it doesn't make sense. Because it's in the middle too. That's the other thing, is it's the middle trim. If you want the bonkers plug-in hybrid with the most power, then you go with the turbo E-Hybrid, and you're like, dang, that's a lot of power. You go for the base one, and it's like, well, I was just being like, I didn't want to spend too much.
This was paired with the V6.
Yes.
Because like the V6 Cayenne that I drove is still a good vehicle, but that's because you're trying to get the lowest price. Like you're just trying to get into a Cayenne, so it's the affordable. Whereas this is more mid-trim. I mean, yeah, you can use electricity. So maybe if you live in one of those countries or cities where you can't have gas in the city, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and so the other thing too is Cayenne S, the non-E-Hybrid, the regular S, has the V8 back, and look, if you're buying a Cayenne, I'm guessing either you're doing it for the badge or because you want that like Porsche experience. And the V8 is a really good engine, and it's actually not that thirsty for what it is. So, yeah, this is it's just good. But it's not exciting, and I don't get that like Porsche magic from it. I will say though that it has the same towing rating as other Cayennes, so it has like a 7,700 pound tow rating, which is surprising for something this size, right? So that's impressive.
Yeah, like I guess the way to think of this is someone who's not like, you can't compare it to another Cayenne buyer. You're looking at it as people who might buy I don't know, like a lower Range Rover Sport or a Defender, or maybe even like a Escalade or something, but
yeah,
you're doing those sort of tasks but with a Porsche badge. So yeah. All right, and our last story of the week is back to Detroit Auto Show. There was another Mustang, and this one is more exclusive, but a lot less money, and a lot different.
Well, yeah, no, it will be a lot less money, although that is a big
can't
question
buy
I
it.
have about this. So, yes, this was a surprise, a genuine surprise, which was kind of fun to have. So, Thursday night, Ford had us to debut the GTD Spirit of America, and then it brought Von Gittin Jr. out in a camouflaged Mustang where he did some low-speed drifting inside the building, and then came to a stop and presented the RTR. So, RTR is ready to rock. Von Gittin Jr.'s company that has been modifying Mustangs for 15 years now. And this is only the second time Ford has brought in an outside professional to modify a regular production model. And we all know who the first one was. So
Tennessee. Saline.
Steam Saline. Yeah, so I mean, pretty rarefied air to be brought in and develop a Mustang with Ford. And what may or may not ruffle some feathers is that it is based on the EcoBoost.
Yeah.
I get it. There is EcoBoost Performance Pack now, but there's none of those. The previous generation one had packages that you could actually increase the power, right? And those are gone. So I think this is more to just, provide people who don't want a V8 a little more fun. It looks like there's some slight styling changes. I mean, there's obviously the little portholes in the grille that light up, which are an RTR signature. But there's some new wheels.
Big too.
The spoiler, it's hard to tell. It looks slightly different from the optional one that you can get elsewhere on the Mustang. But yeah, we didn't see any of the interior, interestingly enough. Will they bring back the manual? But
so
this
is sold. Yeah, you don't need the manual for drifting. You just need a hydraulic handbrake in it. So this will be sold through Ford dealers then, right?
Yeah. This will be a regular Mustang that you can just buy at any dealer.
I know we were joking before, but I really wonder what their classification of outside vendor, because like you could buy Shelby's and you could buy Celine's through Ford dealers for decades. So where do they draw the line between those?
But those were never developed with Ford. That was the thing. Those companies took Mustangs, modified them, and then you could buy them at the dealership or parts or whatever. But this is this was developed in-house.
I see. So they take it, do it, and then they send it back to Ford to sell. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So the interesting stuff too, I will assume it has the drift brake like the regular Mustang has. That's available as an option. I think that debuted in the Focus RS. And it will take bits from the Dark Horse, which is interesting. They didn't say exactly which, but there will be parts of the Dark Horse in here. And they were very they were very they refused to talk price. Or sorry, the price. They refused to talk power. That was the interesting thing too, is you'd think that if it was just parts and handling, then they'd be fine with announcing it. So I get the feeling there will be some bump in power. The question, of course, then becomes, where does this land in terms of price? Because once you're getting into GT territory, it's a hard sell.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm of the opposite thinking on that. I think they didn't say the power because they didn't push it up, and they don't want that to be the story. Because you're right. If they had like a lot of power, why would you not say this is a 400 horsepower EcoBoost? If even it was 350, maybe announce it, maybe not. But if it's like 5 more horsepower, like, I get why I say it, but I have a feeling it'll be pretty similar, because that would be the headlines like, oh, Drift Mustang, more money for the same performance, even though it may not, because like you said, it could have other parts from the Dark Horse.
Well, but if you don't announce the power now, then when you do, like in a month or two, then you get more news cycle coverage.
Sure.
I don't know.
Or you just sneak it in there when you release the car.
I'm curious. I'm curious to see where it lands in terms of price and performance, because I don't love the current EcoBoost Mustang, and so if this is a little sharper, it could be a viable alternative for people looking for fun. And also, I mean, it's designed by someone who gets sideways for a living, so it should be a little more entertaining.
All right, well, that wraps it up for reviews and news. This went longer, but that's because this is a different episode this week. So we will take a very short break and be back with the question of the week. I'd like to have the custom of the week. That'd be fun. All right, We'll be right back. All right, so welcome back. I am springing this question on Kyle, like I like to do a lot of weeks. So because it's a new year and just had the Detroit Auto Show and CES, I thought, what is your automotive prediction for 2025? So we won't take too much time here, but I have sort of 3 different levels, okay? So one's going to be the one that I think will happen for sure. The second one is one that I think has a good chance, and then I have an outlier as my third one.
All right.
So I'll kick it off, I guess, with the one that I think will happen for sure. And this is something I talked about, but I think the ZR1 is going to do what the Viper ACR did years ago. And I think they're just out right now, like in a video game, collecting trophies. And I think they're going to say it sets speed records at like dozens of tracks around the world. I think it's just going to be one of those, look at what this thing can do. In the hands of a race car driver, you or I will probably just smoke the tires and, go way slower. But the right person behind the wheel, it's like having an unlimited GT3 car, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So on that same level, man, this is tough because I'm on the spot. I think BMW's teased it. They've mentioned it a few times now, and I'm just gonna say it. I think this electric M3 is actually going to be pretty wild. It might be one of the more fun M cars in years.
Yeah, if they give it crazy all-wheel drive horsepower and all the M fast bits with all that instant torque, it'll be heavy, but it could be fun. It could feel like the Ioniq 5N jacked up.
But the idea of quad motor, like that's the thing that really makes it interesting, is because it can adjust power at each corner whenever you need it. And so that idea and the agility that it will allow for, I think will really blow some minds as long as it's done well. And so that's my prediction, is that might be the most fun enthusiast BMW in a while.
To counter, it may not be. It may be like the GTR where you hit a corner and the 4 computers rip you through that corner so fast. It's like you didn't do anything. The car just takes you through and off you go. It might be too capable, but I guarantee there'll be some sort of drift mode, and it'll probably be the easiest car to drift because you just push a button and the 4 motors work. Although we will see plenty of videos of them crashing. For sure. So in a complete opposite direction, I think it's going to happen, or at least be announced, is I don't think the Hemi's coming back for Dodge, but a V8 is coming back. There will be some sort of V8 announcement before the year's over. New management, a whole bunch of people who were pretty much peed off that the Hemi was canceled. I know the Hemi as it stands can't really stick around doing emissions, but like they're Dodge. They know how to make V8s. They could easily just get a block and make a new one. It could not necessarily make more power than some of the big Hurricane Turbo 6s, but it could be an option in their trucks and the Charger down the road. The Charger has the space, and obviously the trucks have the space. So.
Okay. All right. Talking about V8s, that will be my prediction for the Mustang. We currently, like, the Dark Horse is the top. Well, the GTD is the top, but that's a Mustang in the same way that. Never mind. I don't really have a good comparison.
The 911 GT1 was the 911.
Yeah, there we go. So I think there will be another high-performance Mustang, and it's not going to use either of the previous Shelby engines. It will be a new engine.
I agree. There's a huge gap between GTD and the other car in price, but definitely in performance. I could foresee the GTD engine without as many of the exotic internals, detuned a bit, being in something down the road.
Okay, interesting, because I see a different approach. There are a lot of big numbers, cubic inch numbers from Ford's past that could be brought back before V8s can't really be done in that size. And so I'm just throwing it out there. That's my crazy prediction, that maybe there will be a large V8 Mustang.
I'm doing it by business sense of the real reason the Mustang sells a V8 is because they're keeping it in the trucks too. So unless the truck's getting that engine, I can't foresee them making a new one, whereas they've already put in who knows how much money in this GTD engine. So,
and they trucks just got a new V8 not too long ago.
True, and they could just slap a supercharger on the 5-liter too and call it a day. Who knows? Yeah, but yeah. I like that idea. And then I'm gonna switch directions again for my dark horse. So
No, I just covered the dark one.
Two of them are already out. I've driven one, and it was good first attempt, but it had a lot of issues. I think the VinFast VF3, when it arrives, is going to be a smash because I think it's going to have crazy lease rates as a small little electric car that'll get a lot of people into an EV that is still somewhat usable because I mean it's still a little SUV. If you use the VF7's sticker price compared to the leases they're giving on it, I can't imagine how aggressive they could get with the VF3. So
sorry, I don't remember the VF3.
It's the little guy.
Oh, the tiny guy.
Yeah. They announced in the summer it's coming. So if that's like, it'll probably only have power and range somewhere around maybe the 500. It might have more range, but it's a practical little SUV. So it could just be one of those cars. If you can lease it for like, I don't know, like $199 bi-weekly or even less, like it could be a hit.
Okay. All right. That's your out there one.
It could be like it could do for VinFast, sort of like what the Accent did for Hyundai, where it just got people in them, and then they progressed with their customer base.
Okay. I don't know how out there this one is. My prediction is that the Italian parts of Stellantis will not be sold here within the next 2 years.
I thought you were going to say we're going to be sold off.
Well, I'm just going with, that could also apply.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, I don't see I don't see a future for Alfa and Fiat here. And it really makes me sad because the Fiat is actually a ton of fun. It's just it doesn't work for anyone outside of a city in North America. And then the Alfas are still fantastic, but at this point they're just old.
And Maserati.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like they need to do something with them, you're right. Especially in the US where everything's a separate dealer. Like they either need to make a Alfa Fiat Maserati dealer, and it's like that's the Italian dealership, and they can have maybe a range, like sort of like a GM or Chrysler does, where each brand does something like, I don't know, Alfa becomes your SUVs and Maserati your cars, and something like that. Or let the Dodge dealers sell them, because like the Dodge Chrysler lineup isn't huge. I mean, Ram and Jeep are, but I don't know. You're right. I just don't think they can survive on their own, although they have this far.
I mean, they have, but like it can't be profitable. I drove the Grecale last April. I have seen two on the road. You mentioned Maserati, and I forgot about Maserati.
I forgot that car existed until you just said it. I was like, the what?
Yeah, right? It's like you made a smaller, more affordable SUV to sell in bigger numbers, and I've seen more of your old original SUV. Like, I don't understand.
Now, part of that's the dealer network. Like, I know there's one around here, but I couldn't even tell you where the nearest Maserati dealer is. Like, they're in small numbers, but yeah, it's unfortunate because they both, like, all those brands have such great heritage and they made such cool cars. And yeah, I don't know. Something's got to change, but I don't think your prediction's too far off. They've left before, and maybe they're going to leave again and come back one day.
Yeah, when you tell people that Ferrari wouldn't exist without Alfa, it's mind-blowing. Like, that's how important Alfa is to automotive history, but it's like, what is it doing now? And I really like the cars, but I've talked with the dealers before, and I don't know how it is in the US, but in Canada, the tough thing that they're facing is BMW and Mercedes and Audi have really good lease deals, and people in those markets are leasing, they're not buying. And so you can't compete as Alfa because people think your car looks great and it drives great. But if you can't get a good monthly payment, then they're just going to go elsewhere.
So Kyle, you're saying people are getting vehicles out of their means in debt because it's a better deal. That doesn't sound like the current automotive landscape at all.
What?
That's crazy. So on that note, we'll end this. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Kyle's going to magically transport to Detroit. I'm going to change my clothes, and we'll have Greg on, who will introduce you as the newest member of AutoGuide, and we will talk show. And after that, we'll be back quickly with what's ahead. Okay, so welcome back. This is a special segment we're going to have here because, as you can see, or if you're listening, I guess you can't, we have Kyle on location with the newest member of the AutoGuide team.
Hey everybody, Greg Migliori, happy to join. I'm psyched to be here, psyched to be at the Detroit Auto Show. Let's talk some cars, right?
Yeah, so that's sort of what we're going to talk about is the Detroit Auto Show, because you're both there right now and it's going on. When people hear this on Monday, it'll still be going for the public, but you're there on Media Day. Greg is a Detroit native who's had tons of experience on the show. What do you think about this year and sort of the direction of the show right now?
So I think this year is like the first step for the show, which is kind of in transition. I think the future of the show is probably going to be more of a consumer show. It's always attracted like hundreds of thousands of people during the public days of the show. But for years, it was almost like the media part of it just so dwarfed that element of it that people didn't even think of it as a consumer show. And I think now it's more of like a rebrand. You see more Detroit Auto Show signage versus North American International Auto Show. Walking around the floor, honestly, it feels pretty credible. Like the Detroit 3 have, reasonable displays, some cool like things you could ride in, things like that. There's a lot of dealership groups that have sort of filled in with some of the like German and other brands that are here. Honda and Toyota have, decent displays. So I think it's solid. And I think this is how I think the new normal is going to be. Last night we had a pretty big Ford press conference, which to me, that felt like a traditional Detroit Auto Show press preview. And then today it's basically just been, there were Car of the Year awards in the morning and then kind of just like a press preview, which is I think how a lot of auto shows do it. And I think you're going to see more auto shows around the world move to that model.
Yeah, Kyle and I have talked about the LA show because we were there, obviously, and we did a show out of there. And same thing, like the press days used to be 2 full days of nonstop introductions, and this year it was a half day. And we live in Toronto, and our auto shows never had like world debuts, a lot of Canadian debuts and whatnot, but our show's always been very consumer focused. And although we have a big media day, the attendance is crazy. I think last year they set the record again. So there's still a point to these shows, even if it's not like how it used to be in Detroit, where all the big 3 and even some import brands, if they're going to put something in North America, you launched it there. Like the Viper concept, like stole the show. And I remember one year when Chevy rolled out the new Z28 as a surprise and stuff. Yeah, I think those days are gone, because in the internet world, you can captivate someone at any time of the day, any day of the week. You just release something.
I think that's a great point too. It's just how we consume information, whether it's cars or music or sports, politics. It's just different. You don't necessarily need to use an auto show as a conduit to reach your enthusiastic consumer audiences, at least with your new reveals. I mean, I remember the days where Mercedes would have their global chairman and CEO here for like a State of the Union address. Carlos Ghosn would fill up like a theater in this building and just talk for like an hour. And I think you don't see that anymore, not because I think things are less important, but because there's just a different way of doing things. You can reach more people with, a reel on Instagram or a tweet or something. So, things have changed a lot. And I think this show reflects it. But I think it also does. Walking around, I was somewhat surprisingly encouraged. And I think the robustness of just the floor layout and what you could expect, just like if you're a car fan in the upper Midwest or Windsor who wants to just come and look at some cars, that's what I think the auto show here in Detroit will be, going forward. And, Ford did some cool stuff last night too. I think that's like Kyle and I were standing there and looking at some of the different things that came out, some Mustang news, a Bronco special edition that we actually had already seen, but not really seen in person. Jared Goff, the Lions quarterback, was there. I mean, that's like a legit press conference, old school press conference, celebrities, some cars, I thought they delivered.
Yeah, and it was nice to have an actual surprise. Because that Mustang RTR, that was cool. That was not hinted at for us heading into this. So it's nice.
And they went with the EcoBoost.
They did like kind of like a, you got to show off your fuel efficient technology while doing burnouts around indoor. That was cool. That was almost old school. Do like an indoor, like kind of like crazy, donuts like that. So that was cool to see. I actually thought showing it in camo was kind of a nice touch. It just added to the like, hey, this is a prototype. This is coming. Vaughn Gittin Jr. has been working on Mustangs for a long time. I interviewed him at SEMA back in like 08 or 09, and he was just getting into it. And I remember even then people were like, okay, this drift guy is going to do Mustangs. Okay. And he really in the last decade plus has made them credible, desirable. He does some things that make the Mustangs better. And Ford was kind of quick to point out this is only the second time they've had like an outside tuner work with them on a Mustang, with Carroll Shelby, I would presume, being the other. So that's pretty good company.
Yeah, rarefied air.
Yeah, because they made a couple Mustangs for Ken Block back in the day too. I can't remember what he called them, but yeah, he had those cool. I remember the all-wheel drive Mustang. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Just for those listening and watching, that you guys broke up for a second there, but I don't think they missed much. It was just a half second. One thing you mentioned that's funny is how they had the Detroit Lions quarterback. That's something also in the old shows you wouldn't have because the team was terrible. So it's kind of nice you have a good team right now.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, back-to-back North champions, number one seed.
Yeah.
I mean, hey.
Yeah.
Should be good for
them.
You can think back, there would be I remember seeing the cast of Desperate Housewives was in Detroit one year. I think Jerry Seinfeld was here for an Acura reveal. So, hey, I give Ford credit for a little bit of shake and bake.
Yeah.
Well, not at the same time, different shows.
Yeah. No, but it's a weird, Jerry and anything other than Porsche. But yeah, it was good. And there's, speaking about the Lions, there's a special edition F-150. Although rather confusingly, it's a 2024.
Those are actually already on sale. I've seen them, and they may have a 25 edition too. Another banner, another vehicle, right?
Yeah.
So,
sorry, I got confused there. I'm gonna have to go back and listen. I thought you said Jerry Springer and not Seinfeld.
I don't know what said, but I meant Seinfeld.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's that's a weird combo. Why would Jerry Springer be here with Acura?
Maybe they would bring, the minivan makers might want his feedback on the best chairs that are portable. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's I don't know. So back to the auto show. Something else, having worked at an OEM, is budgets are much different now. It's not like the industry is in trouble, but things have changed. I mean, some manufacturers are in trouble. So some have just pulled it all together. But I think a lot, and you're seeing some come back, is it's no longer a PR budget. It's much more of a marketing budget. I mean, maybe it was shared before, but they realized, like in Toronto, a ton of them pulled out on 22, and some came back in 23 because of how many consumers go there. Like if you're going to if you're not a car person and the auto show is your chance to see cars, I don't know, I'm just making up brands, but like Honda, Nissan, and Toyota are there, but Mazda isn't. Are you going to even consider the Mazda down the road because you didn't get to see and feel, and it's not on your radar? So I think there's a definite consumer advantage down the road. Yeah, no, absolutely. And beyond just a regular consumer thing, I mean, people looking to buy new cars, because obviously that's a main draw. It's just the supercar stuff, right? Like the fun, cool cars is where you bring in kids and you get kids really fascinated and interested in cars at a young age. It's a family day trip. It's an adventure.
I think there's because I think there's fewer overall like OEM sponsored displays here. There is a little more space on the floor, and that gives you room for things like Camp Jeep, Bronco Mountain, which I tell you what, my 6-year-old cares way more Camp Jeep than he would, whatever Mercedes latest, trim level of, the E-classes. So I think that could be a good thing for consumers. And some of the, I noticed there's some relatively new concept cars, they're not debuts, but like the Chrysler Halcyon, I think, is out there.
That Cadillac
had one.
Velocity.
The Buick Wildcat. So there's some like the grandeur of old, but just still a little bit of a different approach to it.
It's good to know
my
that
son too.
Home based, like it's home team stuff. It's stuff that was developed and designed here.
When I went to the Toronto show last year with my son, he was I didn't forgive me for we didn't get to go on Camp Jeep because when we got there the lineup was crazy. So I said, we'll go back in a bit and see how it is. And then at the end of the day it was still crazy and they closed down. So yeah, I definitely owe him that this year. We're going to have to make sure to get there early because, I mean, we are so spoiled and take for granted things like that. We look at it and we're like, we do more hardcore off-roading and on real mountains. But 99% of people don't. So to them, it's, it's a big thrill. And when you're in the vehicle and you're inside and you're like sideways or almost looking straight up, it's crazy. Do they have the new Camp Jeep, the one that they showed in LA, where it has like the new Super Mountain? Or is it just the regular one?
I think it's the previous one. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to go confirm.
Yeah, I didn't look that closely at the elevation of Camp Jeep. Bronco Hill looks pretty robust.
Yeah.
And there's actually an EV track too, which is kind of cool. You hear the test drivers, you get the passengers in there, and then they take off kind of quick and let them experience all the torque. So, I mean, that is from a consumer standpoint kind of a cool thing. You get to realize, oh, hey, electric cars will rip your head off. They're fast if you want them to be. And do I really want this off-roader? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. So that's different, than because we're used to driving Broncos and Wranglers sideways and over rocks and through mud, but your average consumer might not be. So, kind of cool.
So one last thing before we wrap this up, is the Charger Daytona there, and did you get to hear the exhaust Fratsonic?
Yes and no. I saw it. It was sitting right out front. First time I've actually seen it in production form in the flesh, outside if they're actually on the roads around Detroit. Right? So there's that. But they didn't fire it up. Maybe you've heard it?
I heard it in working form. Maybe at SEMA? I've heard it last year, but I haven't heard the final production one. Get lucky and hear through all earlier or later before we get kicked out. I just want to add one quick thing before we go too. Greg just went right over it earlier when he mentioned the awards, but he was a central part of handing out the NACTOY awards.
My laptop's over there. I actually have one of the mini awards they give out. I was the treasurer for the last couple of years, so that means that you get to pass out the awards, which is kind of cool. They're kind of heavy. Ed Welburn actually designed them originally. It's like a kind of a swoopy Art Deco thing. But the winners this year, Ford Ranger and trucks, Volkswagen ID Buzz in crossover utilities, and car of the year was the Honda Civic. So I'm a juror. I voted somewhat in line with that. I'll put it that way. I think it was actually the toughest year for voting, I thought. Normally there's like one or two slam dunks, and then you're like, okay, and then a few others, it's tighter. I mean, for me, I thought any of the 9 finalists could have won and could have been credible. It was a really, it was a good field this year. I think it was a tough vote. I'll be interested to see the raw, ballots, votes at the end of it, but also very deserved. I think Ranger, Civic, ID Buzz, you can't go wrong with that. I think they all were very good in their segment. I can't wait to test things next year.
I was going to say, I've been involved in many of these car of the year votes and obviously witnessed and read some, and even ones I voted on. When I see the final results, I'm like, what? And you're right. Like the Buzz, the Civic Hybrid, you can't argue with those. I know like the Buzz is new and it has its drawbacks. I mean, I had it for 2 weeks, but right now it's like the coolest thing on the road. And then I drove the Ranger with the V6, and I've driven the 4 and I've driven the Raptor, and I never really got it. But then when I drove the V6, I was like, okay, this is the right setup. This is what it should have. It's the right amount of power, the right price, and it's just the right size. I drive so nice for a pickup too.
I actually strangely like the Raptor a little bit more than I like the more basic trims. And not for like all the just like the red meat reasons. I just kind of felt like, oh, hey, this is a great way to hot rod a truck. And speaking of things that'll rip your head off.
Yeah,
that's true.
Cheap Raptor too, compared to the other ones, like a 2/3 the price or something. It's crazy. But all right, well, we should wrap this up and let you get back to your duties and looking around the show and whatnot. So thanks for being on, and I'm sure we'll have you on many times down the road. And enjoy the rest of the show.
Anytime.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, it's been a lot of Kyle and I talking because this has been a separate one-off episode. Next week, we'll be back to more of our regular formula, and you won't have to hear from just us as much. So this week, we've kind of already covered what you were doing, but you were driving something this week.
Yeah, I got back into a Mustang Mach-E for the first time in a while, and it is
AutoGuide show's like sponsored by Mustang. It sounds like.
Yeah, seemingly. I was supposed to be in something a little more fun, but that got moved, and so it seemed appropriate to take a Ford to Detroit to go see new Fords. I largely like the Mach-E. I still think it is a pretty good package. It is the best-selling Mustang now, which I'm sure pisses off some people.
Really, it outsells the regular, like even the EcoBoost and stuff. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's fun, and it is. It's a lot of fun in the snow. I will just say it's really easy to play around. But yeah, so I did there and back about 1,000 kilometers or 600-ish miles, and it's good. Blue Cruise mostly behaved itself. I got stuck in some snow, and so of course that limits its usefulness. I mean stuck as in I got surrounded by a snowstorm. I didn't literally get stuck in the snow. And I still don't like those buttons for the doors. I still think it's silly, especially when it's snowing. But largely, it's a good package. And so, yeah, that was what I drove this week. And then, Mike.
So you took an unusual Mustang to see an unusual Mustang.
Exactly.
Story writes itself. I did nothing this week. I did not have a car. I was catching up on a ton of movies, a ton of videos. I'm making feature films over here. So I caught up on all that. And the next week, we are back at our regular program overall. And you and I are doing a comparison that we hinted at. It's the 25 Forester against the 25 Rogue. So all new, important big seller for Subaru against heavily revised big seller for Nissan. Lawsuit you mentioned notwithstanding, it is one of their best products they make right now. So, and it did really well in their last big comparison. So I'm really curious because you and I had very, very limited time with the Forester and had heard good things. And being someone who has extensive knowledge of Subarus, the one thing I kept hearing is 100% right. It is so much quieter inside. Like,
yes,
they've really sound deadened and everything, and gotten the CVT and the flat four to like be pretty silent. I mean, if you really get on it, you still hear it, but yeah, they've done a good job. Like, I think they're on par now with the competition. So
yeah,
if you get all the other pluses like the fuel mileage, handling, ground clearance, sight lines. I mean, the styling inside and out's different. I mean, they changed.
It's true
that for the last like 2 decades. So.
It's true. Like one of the criticisms is that the Forester has always looked like the Forester, and now it doesn't. It looks like a 20-year-old Mitsubishi.
No, it looks like a Ford Explorer.
From the
last
front.
Explorer.
The back looks like the Outlander from the mid-2000s.
I actually had someone flat out mistake it for a Ford when they saw the front. They're like, "Oh, I thought that was the new Edge." Oh, no, I'm sorry, not the Edge, the new Escape. And I said, "No, that looks like a Tesla." And we've seen some spy shots of their other vehicles. It looks like Subaru's finally going to branch out. So, this one, I don't think it's terrible. It just resembles things, but they're going to have hits and misses. But at least they're changing things up. That's the important thing.
Yeah,
like I got in a 24, and then I got in the 25, and the interiors too. Like the 24 was like modern, but it was like renditions of the same thing from the last 10-15 years, and then this one is like, oh, okay, this is a lot like the Outback's interior, which is very different from everything else until now. But everyone's feeling it. So so we look forward to that. We'll have some very small thoughts next week, but we'll have the video and the written review down the road, and we will be back with F1 and some interviews with OEMs and everything next week.
Everything. So that was a good kickoff to the year.
Yeah, it should be a fun year. If you want to see how much fun, look at our most anticipated vehicles video and article.